Labor and Employment Brazil. I would like now to ask Mr. Farrugia to actually take the stand, and at the same time, I will call from Mr. Diaz Arrivilegaga, government delegate from Honduras, to come here forward, please, waiting for his speaking session after Mr. Farrugia. Thank you.
Chairman, delegates, I congratulate the Director General of the ILO, Mr. Guy Ryder, for his expansive report, which lays out the salient forces currently transforming the world of work against a backdrop of almost a century of global economic history in which the ILO has been a major protagonist and an agent of positive change. The report rightly points to the phenomenon of the three-speed global recovery, whereby many countries within the European Union are struggling with unemployment, with unprecedented levels of unemployment, youth unemployment in particular, and with economic stagnation compared to substantial growth in emerging and developing. I find that it is no coincidence that job recovery is weakest in those countries where job creation is much more difficult and complex than job destruction due to over-regulated labour markets. While one can sympathize with the Director General's statement that, when it comes to employment, the supposedly atypical has become typical and the standard has become the exception, it is also true that many enterprises find it problematic to operate in tightly regulated markets, and that regretfully, flexible and atypical work contracts are being confused with substandard employment. Recently, there has been mounting pressure by some unions in Malta to address what is being labelled as precarious employment. While employers have no issue with using the mechanisms in our social dialogue framework to curb any type of employee exploitation, we should all stop chasing ghosts and identify concrete and constructive actions which each party should take to arrive at a holistic solution. Government has to allocate sufficient resources to enforce existing legislation. Introducing new laws when there already exists a solid legal framework that addresses the allegations active. In addition, government also carries the responsibility to set a decent minimum hourly rate for public procurement of labour-intensive services. The competitive downward spiral, which affected working conditions of many employees in Malta, particularly in outsourced services, is the direct result of public procurement practices which placed price as the overriding criterion in the selection of service providers to the exclusion of other relevant criteria. On their part, unions are expected to respect the principles of freedom of association, which includes the right of employees to choose not to be represented or to be represented by the union of their choice. Employers strongly oppose the notion of awarding government contracts only to unionized companies, as this is discriminatory both to companies and to workers. Employers are being proactive on this issue and have proposed setting up a services charter which can be governed by a tripartite committee as a self-regulating instrument to ensure a level playing field between operators in these sectors, and that they conduct business subject to defined ethical guidelines. This is a better option than imposing further market rigidities that impair the job-creating potential of the economy. I appeal to government and unions to use this as a test case whereby we can build mutual trust and work collectively to put into practice fundamental ILO concepts of social dialogue and sustainable enterprises. In spite of the resilience of the Maltese economy with relatively low unemployment, a strong financial services sector, and real GDP growth of 1.6% in the first quarter of 2013 compared with a contraction of 1.1% of the Eurozone countries, we still face major challenges that are very much in line with the items on the agenda of this year's ILO conference. The changing demographic context has both immediate and longer-term implications in a nation with a low birth rate and aging population. Social partners have to design strategies that generate investment and higher value-added labour participation through active labour market policies and safeguard the sustainability of our welfare and pension systems. Some progress has been registered over the past years, as both the female participation rate and the number of retired persons in employment has been on the increase. Sustainable development is a critical issue in a densely populated country which lacks natural resources. An orientation towards an environmentally sound economy presents challenges which can, however, also help in transforming the economy by exploiting the prospects available in growing markets for environmental goods and services and creating higher value-added green jobs. There has also been substantial investment in vocational education, which has been instrumental in matching skills generation to the requirements of industry. The discussion on social dialogue in this year's conference is also relevant to Malta, And our appeal to the newly elected government is to continue to support the social dialogue framework for a more wide-ranging involvement of the social partners in national issues, such as attaining sustainable public finances and the reduction of early school leavers. None of us, government, unions, not even employers, can afford to operate in isolation in the current volatile and unpredictable international economic and social environment. The reference to realities, renewal and tripartite commitment mentioned in the title of the Director General's report fit in very well within the Maltese context. In conclusion, I find that the Oslo Declaration lays out the role of the social partners quite eloquently, where it states that fiscal consolidation, structural reform, competitiveness on one hand, and stimulus packages, investment in the real economy, quality jobs, increased credit for enterprises on the other, should not be competing paradigms. Skeptics might argue that it is easier to express these principles on paper than to implement them. But there is no question that the best path to harmonize the seemingly conflicting forces of fiscal consolidation and economic stimulus is that of commitment and consensus between the social partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrugia. I would like now to call